In that one, we discussed on core principles. Then principles that guide framework activities. What are the framework activities? Planning, communication, designing, analysis and design, construction, deployment. So for every framework activity, we should follow some principles. So general principles explained yesterday. 7 general principles are there. Provide value to the end user and keep it simple. Maintain vision for the product and project. Recognize that other consume what you produce. Means you should consider your client because he is the one who use your product. So be open to the future, plan ahead, for reuse, think. These are general principles for every engineering process. So next, principles that guide process. Be agile, focus on quality at every step, be ready to adapt, build an effective team, establish mechanisms for communication and coordination. Then manage change, assess the risk, create a product that provide value for others. Okay, yesterday I discussed these points and principles that guide practice, principles that guide process, principles that guide practice. What are the principles which guide engineering practices? Practice and principles already we learned, right? Then what are the principles which guide the practice? Divide and conquer, understand the use of abstraction, strive for consistency. Yesterday I gave the explanation for all the points. Strive for consistency, focus on the transfer of information, build the software which exhibit effective modularity, look for pattern. Why we are looking for patterns? To increase the reusability. When possible, represent the problem and solution from number of perspectives. So these are the principles which guide practice. So learn all these points. Next, we are going to discuss on principles that guide every framework activity. The framework activity I already said: planning, modeling, construction, and deployment. So for every single framework activity, we have to learn the principles. So when it comes to communication between the stakeholders, right? The stakeholders means all the persons who are directly or indirectly involving in the project. It may be a customer, it may be a manager, it may be marketing people, higher officials, coming to the developers and supporting staffs. Everyone will be there in that stakeholder group. So first thing, if you want to communicate, general principle is you need to listen them. Suppose if anyone is speaking, you have to listen. First, communication principle is not really regarding the software project. For every communication, the basic thing you need to listen them. Then prepare before you communicate. Without preparation, if you speak, you will speak something else. So you should understand the problem, and after that you meet with others. Then someone should facilitate the activity. Someone should be one leader should be needed. One facilitator should be needed to keep the conversation in a productive direction. Otherwise, you may talk something else, right? And if there is any conflicts in between, the facilitator will manage. You know that in talk shows, television talk shows, always a facilitator is there. What is his role? What is his role? He's there to What is the facilitator role? One thing is the talk show become a productive manner, means what they are planned to convey, that they have to convey, because people will, obviously there will be a conflict because people have different opinion. So if the some people will approach the thing very emotionally, so maybe it's out of control, some situation. So the facilitator should handle such type of situations, right? And that's why for every meeting, we need a facilitator or mediator or a leader. Then face-to-face communication is the best thing, but always it won't be possible. It may not be possible at the time. You can go for other methods too. Then next, take notes and document decisions. Because when we need to document, even in the meetings also, we used to prepare minutes of meeting. Like that, you need to document. That person who are documenting the meeting, we call recorder. He used to write down all the points and decisions which we have taken during the meeting. So like that, same things only. Then strive for collaboration. Collaboration is needed because we should not argue each other. Arguments are not good. We can talk openly. We can speak our views, our perspectives, but we should not argue. It's my opinion. You could say that it's my opinion, but others also have the same right. So the collaboration is very important. Stay focused, modularize your decision. When the topic is bounced from one topic to another, you should focus on that particular topic. Otherwise, we will talk something else. So when many people, it generally happens when we are chit-chatting with our friends, sometimes everyone experiencing, right, that the topic may be bounced from one to another based on others' opinions. So this won't happen when we are doing a formal communication. Formal communication is an agenda. We should stay on that agenda. We should focus on that. Then if something is unclear, it's not clear with a document or a speech, you can draw a picture. Once you agree to something more, if you cannot agree to something more, if a feature or function is unclear, cannot be clarified at the moment, more, means you should not stuck somewhere. You can move. The negotiation is not a contest or game. Negotiation was needed, but you should take because you have tendency, you should be ready to compromise. This is not like, suppose that win-to-win rule you should apply. It means both parties should be. You, when as a engineer, you are communicating with your client. You have your own stand. You can convince many things to your client, but you should not argue with them. So that you should remember, negotiation is needed, but you should be ready to compromise to some points. You should not argue with them, and there is no winner and no loser. Both needs to win. Win rule we need to implement. I mean, we need to focus that. What is win-win rule? I explained in one of my classes. So these are the 10 principles you have to follow in the communication. Is it clear to everyone? Anybody is there?
Yes, ma'am.
So communication principles are listen, prepare before you communicate. Someone should facilitate the activity. Face-to-face communication is the best, but other options also recommendable based on your circumstances. Sometimes we could not, suppose if we are geographically apart, we can't come for a face-to-face meeting, but more advisable is face-to-face. Then take notes and document decisions. Strive for collaboration, stay focused, modularize your discussion. If something is unclear, you can unclear with document, you can go for a picture. And you have to move on. You should not stuck somewhere. And negotiation is not a contest. Okay. So do it meaningful. Then coming to planning principles. These principles are all principles you have to remember. That's like a story. Just come to the context, and you know what are the, at least you can remember some 8 out of 10 principles, right? You can write your own if you understand what it is. Then when coming to planning, understand the scope of project. Scope of project means the objective or scope. If you know the scope, you know what is the destination, what you are doing, what you're going to do, what you're planning. We have a destination, we need to plan for the destination. So you are not started your journey, but you're planning. That's happening in the planning time. So understand the scope of the project means your destination. What is your destination? That is what you're going to implement. That is your destination. So understand the scope, then involve the customer in the planning activity. So customer should be done planning, then only you can take the feedback. Then recognize that planning is iterative. Planning, or no need to collect all the requirements initially. It's an iterative process. You can collect the requirements once started. So it's an iterative way. And it's not curved in stone. Means you can change it later. Estimate based on what you know. Then consider risk as you define the plan. So risk analysis is mandatory, be realistic. What we are planning that you can't implement 100%. Definitely the reality that you should be realistic. Adjust granularity as you define the plan. Means granularity means the level of details, abstraction level. You have to decide, and based on that you can disclose things, you can hide something. That level you have to define every steps, and define how you intended to ensure quality. Describe how you intended to accommodate change. Track the plan frequently and make adjustment as required. So these anyway, once you plan, you can start, but still you have to monitor. And if necessary adjustment is needed, sometimes we could, once we track, we could understand, okay, I couldn't reach the destination on time. I can't meet the deadline. So at the time you have to change your working style, your schedule, your working hours also. Sometimes we need to adjust. So track the plan frequently and make adjustment as required. So these are the 10 principles on planning. Understand scope of the project, involve the customer in planning activities, recognize that planning is iterative, estimate based on what you know. Consider risk as you define the plan. Be realistic at your granularity. As you define the plan, define how you intended to ensure the quality. Describe how you intended to accommodate change. And track the plan. Actually, even though we are planning first, planning is a mandatory step. Initial planning is there, then detailed planning is there. That's according to the requirements reflected. So initial planning, obviously, it's not the proper planning. You just started the planning, but you don't have enough requirements. But still, you should be ready to change your plan, because plan is also not a static thing. Based on the requirement changes, you have to change your planning. Also, you should be ready to change. So you are intended to accommodate the change. Next is modeling principle. Modeling means two class of models are there. Requirement models are there. That is analysis models. Means that is based on the customer requirement. That is information domain, behavioral domain is there. Then design models. Design models are for developers. Therefore, developers. In that, we give detailed design. Okay, so different types of models are there. So based on that, you can create some modeling principles. First principle, the information domain of a problem must be represented and understood. First thing is domain of problem, you need to understand. Okay. Then second principle is the functions that the software performs must be defined. What are the functions? You need the functionality should be defined. Functions and domain of the problem should be defined. The behavior of the software must be represented. Behavior means how the system perform based on an external event. That should be defined. And the model that depicts information, function, and behavior must be partitioned in a manner which uncover the detail in layered fashion. Uncover details in a layered fashion means you should not disclose everything at a time. You can disclose the things one by one, and that too on correct time. So that is uncover detail in layered fashion. Initially, we are going for higher abstraction, then the abstraction level will be reduced and it become more and more disclosed. Then the analysis task should move from essential information towards implementation details. When you're going for analysis modeling, you're going to implement something for which contain essential information, but after that it's going to implementation details. Implementation details means the abstraction level is more. Abstraction is less, means you can disclose more details when it comes to implementation detail. Implementation detail you should not disclose to the outsiders like clients or managerial people. That you can disclose to the developer team. So the level of abstraction is different. Then design modeling principle. Design should be traceable to the requirement model. Always consider the architecture of the system to be built. Design of data is as important as design of processing function. User interface design should be turned to the need of end user. Component level design should be functionally independent. Actually, if you know the context, these principles are very, very easy. If you are listening all my classes, then you can write most of these principles in your own words, because once you know the context. Otherwise, you have to mug up. I won't recommend to mug up all these principles. Understand and write in your own way. Design should be traceable to the requirement model. Always consider architecture of the system to be built. Architecture is very important when it comes